That's just like your opinion, man. You're watching Making Sense with Robbie. Let's get started. Abortion, free speech, taxation, left-right politics, these are all contentious issues that people often get very upset about, that have lots of debate about. But at the same time, people often pretend that they're expressing facts, that they're making factual statements, that they're looking at evidence. But oftentimes they're actually just talking about their opinion. They're just talking about what their feelings sort of tell them about those topics and issues. And those issues and topics are often very complicated, and it's hard to know what the right answer is, what the right thing to do is. So facts are statements that can be proven true or false. You can prove something with science, you can prove it with logic. There's different ways that you could go about proving things. Obviously the best way would be to some science to back it up. Logical statements are often difficult to make, and they're not usually sort of natural in a conversation. The other side of things is an opinion, and an opinion is based on people's feelings about topics or issues. And with an opinion, there's no way to really prove it true or false. But then the question becomes, how much of what we talk about, how much of what we say is an opinion and is a fact? How much can be proven? Any time that someone says something is the best or their favorite, or someone says they dislike or it's the worst, all these statements are opinions. Obviously, we can't prove our opinions because they just are depending on how we feel about something. And I kind of remember, when I was younger, you might have a debate about what your favorite ice cream is or what your favorite pizza topping is. And you could say, well, it's a fact. It's a fact that pepperoni is the best thing to add to pizza. And when we're kids, we don't really realize that that's what we're talking about. But as we get older, we continue to have the same sorts of arguments. We just have them about more complex or complicated issues, and we still sort of express opinions and pretend that they're facts. This is the complication that comes into things. How do you distinguish when someone is expressing an opinion from when there's a fact? How do you prove it's a fact? And there's certain facts that are really obvious, you could say that water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius, and you could say it turns into steam at 100 degrees Celsius, and those are facts that can be proven with science because you can do an experiment to prove it. But how do you do that when it comes to something like meat is murder? And yes, animals are being killed to be eaten. That is a statement, but is it a fact statement? Is murder only applied to humans? It's you could bring forth facts, yes, the animal was killed. Was it killed humanely or not? You could prove that potentially with a fact. But again, it becomes really difficult to distinguish where someone's opinion ends and where the facts begin, or vice versa. There's formal logic, but when it comes to logical arguments, there's a lot of difficulty in making sure that it's formulated in a clear and concise way, that you've kind of gotten rid of all of your errors in your thinking, and that you've covered all your bases. And so it's really hard to do that in a typical conversation. The other side of that is proving something with science, but then sometimes you need to do a double blind test, or you need to do a meta-analysis of different types of results. And again, to have certainty with science or with anything that uses a scientific method, that takes a lot of work, and that's hard to prove. And how often do we do that kind of stuff, or the day-to-day things that come up in our lives? We don't really do that kind of stuff for most of the stuff that matters. And how could we even, right? Because most of the topics that we have debates about or the disagreement about, they're not things that can be easily tested with science. You can't test with science what the right policy is for immigration, or what the right policy is for taxation. You can make assumptions about it and you can do calculations about it, but how do you prove that? Most conversations and debates come down to is opinions, because facts are few and far between in the real sort of world. Because how do you get facts? Where do you find this evidence to support claims? It mostly doesn't exist. Another thing too is what sorts of questions can you even ask? What is the best toothpaste? But how do you make that judgment? Is the best toothpaste the one that gives you the least cavities, the one that tastes the best, the one that does the best cleaning, the one that smells the best, the one that rinses away the best? Again, it's by what standard is this the best toothpaste? And then you kind of step back and you're okay, well, how do I assess the factual value of which the best toothpaste is? And am I using all the toothpastes for my test? And then again, it just kind of comes back to being an opinion. It's what toothpaste do you prefer? Well, I just prefer this one because it costs the least amount of money at the grocery store. That's a fact, right? The cheapest one is a fact that can be proven, because you can go to the grocery store and you can look at all the toothpaste and you can see which one costs the least amount of money. And that would be a fact, this is the cheapest toothpaste, but that doesn't make it the best toothpaste. That doesn't make it the right toothpaste to choose. And again, this is we can make these kinds of statements about things, right? You can say this is the cheapest car, this is the most expensive car, but that doesn't mean anything about which one is the best one. That doesn't say anything about which one you should buy, and it doesn't doesn't say anything about anything else. It just is factors or these qualities that we can measure, but those factors or qualities that can be measured aren't necessarily going to be the ones that answer the questions that we're asking. Like if you're looking for the biggest bucket, then yeah, that's easy. You can choose that because there's like a factual answer to that. But if you're looking for the best bucket, then like what is the best bucket? How do you decide what the best bucket is? I know these are kind of like stupid and silly examples, but like they're mostly the basis of what most of our debates are about, like most of the things that we have disagreement are. It's where the facts lie and where our opinions are in different places, but like often the choices that we make are only able to be made because they depend on opinions, whereas like the facts that we have about things don't necessarily provide the right information for us to make the right decisions. And a lot of times for public policy, like we can say, well, it's good to provide people with enough food to eat. Obviously it makes sense that people should have enough food to eat, but like how do you make that happen? Like where does this food come from? Like how do you get it to the people? How do you decide who needs to have that food? You can have like a fact at the base of the problem, but like when it comes to coming up with solutions, it's just all clouded or it's all filled with opinions. The facts are very far and few between, and they're often very focused on like the base of the problem. They're like at the start of the problem, like they're the reason why we're looking at this problem, but they don't necessarily build up in a way that can give us the right answer, that can give us the right solution to a problem. When it really comes down to it, like most of what we consider facts are actually opinions. Oftentimes we can't distinguish the two because often things are just by necessity an opinion. Like even if there's a sort of fact baked into it, or like there's a fact at the foundation, like generally when someone makes such a suggestion or tries to make a decision, then it becomes an opinion and it stops being a fact. And it's really hard to use facts to prove things because there's so many distinct types of facts, and like facts don't necessarily support the possible outcomes or possible solutions that we have available to us. Oftentimes problems are incredibly complicated, and so like science could answer questions like what is the right amount of carbon dioxide and oxygen to have in the environment to have the optimal outcomes for humans and plants and everything else. Maybe those are some numbers that we can come up with, but those are the facts. But the opinions is like, how do we get there? Like how do we make that happen? What do we have to do to ensure that the oxygen and the carbon dioxide levels are right? Because problems are so complex, like we can have really simple sort of facts that can guide us, but like when it comes to taking action, when it comes to like deciding what we should do, then we always depend on opinions. We're always depending on the opinions of an expert and the opinions of ourselves, and opinions can be influenced by facts, but they're never facts themselves. So what's important to remember is like when someone's talking about something, are they talking about facts or are they talking about an opinion? And I would sort of argue that most of the time it's an opinion, but it might sound like facts. It might be presented like it's a fact, but like how do you tell the difference? How do you know whether or not someone is expressing an opinion or approving or using facts? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this informative or entertaining, click that like button because I'd really appreciate it. If you're curious about learning how to think about things but you don't want to be told what to think about them, then click that subscribe button because that's what I'm here for. You've been watching Making Sense with Robbie. Thanks for watching and we'll talk next time. Goodbye.